few little idiosyncrasies in this one too, as always. So this is my drawer front, this is my drawer side. This is where I'm going to dovetail this into the tail recesses on this piece. And sometimes I would put this in the vise like this and lay a plane on its side and balance this onto that and work that way. I'm going to do it the opposite way for me this time so that you can get a very clear view of what I'm doing. I'm bringing my dovetails in here. These are the same width, so I just flush the pieces, get the corners right, and I reach for my knife because everything from here comes off the knife. So what I'm going to do is come in at the base of the dovetail on here and pull a knife wall onto the end grain, which is quite rare for me to do on each side of the dovetails like this. Don't worry if your knife overshoots because the fibers will close in. You're not removing anything here. This is all about accuracy, so your knife should be very, very sharp, as should your chisels and your saws. Keep that as a maxim in your life and you'll never go far wrong. Okay, now then, here I'm going on the end here, so we're not using a gauge, we're using that rebate that I put on the end as the stop. I'm going with 2 passes, which means the bevel of the knife is going to actually bruise the wood on the good side that I want to keep, but it won't matter because as soon as we apply any kind of glue to this, it'll all close up. There isn't a gap there, it's just the bending of the fibers, that's all. So that's got that done. The next thing you have to see, I don't think you can see these very well here, so I'm going to just see if I can pull a pencil line in. The great danger is that I follow the pencil line and the pencil line didn't follow the knife. I'm going to leave it. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to take the rebate and we're going to put this flush on the outside of the length of the piece here. So my fingers are out here, so I'm making sure that that's flush. Turn this so you can see. Like this. And I'm taking my knife and I'm making a small nick inside there. Keep that position. Bring your square up to the knife. That guarantees the depth of the recess. And we're going across the inside face, staying away from the corners by about 1/4 of an inch. And that is the depth of the recess that I want to cut. So there is my depth. So all I need from here is going to be square lines from the knife walls that I did on the end grain. Now then. Sometimes the knife in end grain, especially on light woods like pine, can be difficult to see. So I'm going to drop this in the vise here. The marks are there. I don't have any question about whether I marked it or not. So I'm going in here and I can hear it click. Well, I think I can. There, I heard that one click. So there is my actual dovetail line. And it's there. It's very clear sound-wise, but not clear visibly. So that's 1. There's 2. But I can't take a chance. I've got to make sure. So I'm going back over there. I'm putting my knife in. I'm going gently and sensitively. You can hear it click, I think. There we go. So I've got that one. There's another one. Pull it gently and it'll follow the knife wall. This is one where it went off here. I can see the pencil line. I tried to mark. Once you've got this done, you can go back in and check yourself. See how it looks. They all look great. So we've got the depth of where we want to go to. I'm going to use the square to go down, guide me as I go down my cuts here. I love this method. Sometimes it's hard to show as it was then. Watch what happens now. I've got to cut down these walls, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer this in the vise this way, and I'm going to cut down here, but I'm going to cut well away from my line. I don't even have to get close to my line. I'm going to be a good, say, a 1/16 of an inch off my line. I don't even have to be parallel to the line because everything is going to come off a chisel cut here. You don't want to go past that depth line that you marked along the end of the dovetails. And now we've got to chop out that midsection. So I'm going to use my 3/8 chisel, well, 1/2 inch chisel I think this time, in here. Just flick that out of the way, that'll expose your knife wall. I hit that one a little bit too hard, I think. I felt like I did. That was better. And I am well away from my dovetail knife wall, and I can tell. And now what we do, instead of chiseling in this way, we're going to actually just split it from the end here about, not too deep, like that. It'll just pop right out like that. We go in and out of the vise for safety. Keep your chisel as vertical as you can. Try not to undercut. We're just taking out the bulk of the waste. I'm going quite heavily with my chisel. Twist this, it'll split to depth. In and out, in and out, in and out. What I'm going to do in a minute, I'm going to switch to a smaller chisel. I'm getting near to my depth. See, I'm going into the rake of the corner now. I'm angling my chisel over. But of course my chisel width is limiting me. We'll show you what we do. So I'm actually catching the side of the dovetail recess there. And then I'm going to go with a small chisel. A 1/4 inch chisel will work great for this. Just go straight into that corner. That will get you down to a similar depth to your wider chisel. I'm coming a little bit more upright because I'm creeping up on my depth line here. Now remember, there's not very much wood on the other side of this now, so as you go down you want to be careful because you definitely don't want to come through the front. That is so sickening. Gently, gently. I'm close to the final depth here. So I'm going to go 1 millimeter off that final depth. There. Take the bulk of the waste out and move into the corner. Like that. You could do each one individually now, if you want to. I'm 1 millimeter off there again. This one I left a lot on, I don't know why. Okay. Now this is the part that can be a little bit tricky. This internal corner here is very tight. You can't always get in. Go onto this part here. Go directly into your knife. Press, rock, and creep into the corner from both sides like this. Now I'm looking for my, or feeling for my knife wall. And I think I'm in it there. I feel like I am. I can't actually see too well, but I'm feeling for it. I want it to be in that knife wall. It looks right. Take it down. Same on this one. So I'm moving towards that inside corner like this, just taking out some of the pressure from the fibers of the wood. Because I want the crisp inside corner. I'm not altogether down on this one. Here's my knife wall now. I'm going into my knife wall. I've got it. I think I got it. There. So those are all the way down on all 3 faces. So I can go back to those in a minute. I'm going to go here. I'm staying off my knife wall a little. Now I'm in my knife wall. Like this. Tricky stuff, this. But you can do it. Where is that line? There it is, I believe. Love it, love it. I love the challenge of it. You can do this. You can do this. We're nearly there. We've got one more to do. Last little bit. This is so nice. See, I'm working the corner of my chisel into the corner, working that down, right in the knife. It's very satisfying when you rest that chisel in the knife wall and you know it's there. It's very unsatisfying when you take it away and you find out you weren't there. Sometimes that happens. So you can see all these fibers now, but watch what happens. We go in down the side of the dovetail like this and sever those fibers all the way down. See how they just pop out? Look at that. Beautiful. So we're very close. This is where we're headed. A little bit left there. Get the corners nice and clean. I'm looking at the wall here. What I'm doing, I'm looking down this end, kind of eyeballing this face, but I don't want the walls on the inside to be sloping the wrong way, otherwise it will affect this when this goes in. Okay, big test now. Did I get it right? Well, actually, it was pretty good, but not perfect. Let's see what I need to do here. A little bit off that one. And you just keep working this until you get close. But unfortunately, I've got at least one where I missed the line and I got the wrong angle. All right, I want to show you something here. This just shows you we're all fallible. Can you see I've got a gap here, and that's because I missed that line, that knife wall. I didn't get it. I thought I'd got it and I didn't get it. So what do I do with this? I'm going to try and find a piece of wood that matches this end grain. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the slither and put it right alongside, glue it back in place, come back with my dovetail, and I'm going to recut it that one edge. So you'll see how it's done. The choice is yours. It's up to you whether you replace the front or whether you take a patch. I keep all the pieces at the end of my bench when I'm working on a project in case I do need to patch. I've found a piece here that looks like the growth rings correspond to the one I took out. So I'm taking a piece of this, putting it in the vise. Which way? It's quite difficult because it's so small. And then I'm going to take a super small saw. And I've got quite a difference in the angle here. It's not parallel, so I'm going to try to shoot for that angle. Oh, there's a piece going to break off as well there, so this must not be my day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to saw at the angle that I think this piece will go in at. It's a very small piece. But I'm going in, I'm making a wedge shape. It's wedge shape in two directions, this one. So I've got a wedge shaped piece here. It's got a slight taper to it, which is exactly what I want. I slide this alongside the dovetail. And then I'm looking at the growth ring. Can I match those growth rings? I think I can get them fairly close. So from here, I'm ready to actually glue this. I'm a little bit long. So I'm going to take off a little bit off the end, like that. And then I'm going to glue one side of the slither that I'm putting in here, not both sides. I'm going to use the dovetail in its place so that I can wedge this against the opposite side, against the pin here. So I press that. And I'm going to leave that alone for about half an hour and then come in and pair it off before I take it apart. And then when I pop the dovetail out, it'll stay there ready for when I do my final glue up. So it's up to you, your choice. Replace the draw front or put the patch in, entirely up to you. Using my system for dovetailing, where you have a recess on the back and use that as the stop, means you rely on a knife wall and you cut round each of the individual dovetails and the end to establish that knife wall. But sometimes you can't see the knife in the end grain. So what I'm suggesting you do is take some masking tape on the end grain of the draw front, like that, and then place your dovetails in position, get them aligned, and then you cut around the dovetails just like this. 1, 2, 3. And what this gives you is the exact location. It's cutting through the tape into the material, the wood, but you're also cutting the surface of the tape. And I'll show you what that does. So now we can lift off the tape, and that leaves the exact recess outlined in the end grain, and you can cut down the side of the tape just as you would the knife wall, and it gives you the exact location of the dovetail, and it's there for you to see very clearly. I'm going to trim up the dovetail that I repaired now, see how it came out. No idea. So I've got that little protruding feather, and I left it to dry for a while. I'm just taking the corner of my chisel along this surface here, and then I'm going to come from the opposite side like this and pare it right out. There it is, it's out. So I'm going to just take a shaving off to see how it did. And that's it. There it is. It's not a perfect match, but it's definitely better than the gap that was there. It'll work for me, and it'll work for you, I think. Once you've got your dovetails done, it's time to think about the groove that goes in the bottom of the drawer on the front and the two sides. And what we have to do is we've got to level up any discrepancy here and here, because these three edges become the registration against which the plough runs, and that sets the groove and the depth of the groove, and it has to be equal, otherwise you'll find you've got a step in the groove when you do it. So not always easy, especially if you have a vise where it doesn't go in. This one doesn't go in full width, but it will go in at this angle. And what I've found is that my drawer bottom at the front, or the bottom edge of my drawer front, is slightly protruding past. So I'm going to use my smoothing plane to go down this edge. And what I'm doing is I'm registering the sole of my smoothing plane on this surface here, so that by the time it hits it here, so I swing around and then I re-register on this side. This one, I could feel it going across the grain. It's dead flush now. This is dead flush. They're both ready to go. So now I know I have that. My next step from practice and from doing it wrong is I know this is the bottom edge. I'm going to put a pencil mark along this inside edge here, just any distance from the edge along this edge here, because that's going to steer me or guide me when I come to run the groove. Otherwise, I can put the groove in the top edge without realizing, and I have to put an inlay in there to make it look right. Okay, so that's what I've got to do. I have to run the groove next, so that's not complicated. I'm going to make sure that my groove comes within this dovetail. So wherever I run this groove, so it looks like if I came up 1/2 inch from the bottom and I've got 3/8 plywood, that's going to go in there. That's roughly the position that I want my groove to go. If I do that, when I run the groove in here, and in here, no groove shows on the joint line when it's completed. In other words, the groove is hidden behind the dovetail joint. So that's what I'm going to use as my reference. So I set this distance with the fence on here, slide the fence over until the side of the cutting iron is registered on that pencil line in there. So I've got this close to registration, a a little bit less of a distance. And then, and that keeps a good distance. I still have plenty of room inside my drawer, so that's the distance that I've set. Lock this off, and the only thing I have left to lock off then is the depth here. So that's going to be 1/4 of an inch deep. So I'm just using a 1/4 inch chisel against the side of the cutter, the bottom cutting edge here, to the underside of the sole, the depth shoe. So there, so I'm ready to actually run these grooves next, and that's what I'm going to do now. So this goes on here, run my groove, and I'm ready to do that. We're going to use a clamp in the vise to hold it. It works nicely. For this, so adjust the clamp so that the shoes on each end don't protrude past the surface. Make sure it's clearing the vise. I've got little bits on this side of the vise, so set this. So we're going to run a groove on all 3 pieces. I'll show you on this one, but they're all exactly the same. Start at the nose here. Work back. And that is close to depth, if not the depth. Here you might find a little difficulty getting that registered. Something's catching. It could be the shoe down in the bottom there. So I'm down to depth now. And you can see here how the groove has come within the dovetail. I'm perfectly happy with that because that means the groove won't show on the side. Now I do the same on the other side piece and the front piece. It's no different. Place it in the vise, run your grooves, and then you're ready to set the distance for the back piece that goes in the back of the drawer.